republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph,
Here.
Board Member Oro,
Here.
Pierre Washington, Board Member Pierre Washington is excused.
Yes.
Vice Chair Abu Damos,
Here.
Chair Garcia.
Here. Thank you, Board. Moving on in our agenda, report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, board members, members of the public, your board convened an open section at 5:36 p.m. to address the matters in closed session, and after ascertaining that there were no comments on the matter agendized for closed session consideration, you went into closed session at 5:36. You returned at 6:20. With respect to the matter agendized for closed session consideration, for each of the three matters considered, there is no reportable action under the common law attorney-client privilege, and that provided by Government Code Section 54-956.9 B2. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll move on. Proclamations and presentations, there's none this evening. Moving on to public comment. Any public comment on items not on the agenda?
No, Chair.
Haven't received anybody? Well, there's no public attending, so very good. We'll move on with our agenda. Any agenda changes? If not, I'll accept the motion to accept the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph,
Yes.
Board Member Oro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Abu Damos,
Yes.
Chair Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, Board. Moving on now in our agenda, public hearings, there are none this evening. Moving on to business items. Item number 5, adopt a resolution number 2022-20 authorizing execution of a lease/purchase agreement with Bank of America in the amount not to exceed $1,842,000 and approving related documents and actions. Board, please. Chief Bellier.
Thank you, Chair. As you may recall, when we brought the preliminary budget before you for consideration, we included the purchase of 2 Type 1 fire engines to replace our aging fire engine fleet. With that approval, we stood up our apparatus committee, which is composed of several of our firefighters here within the fire district. Firefighter Andrew O'Shaughnessy was our chair. Fire Captain Didi and firefighter paramedic Francisco Cano were part of that. They did a very thorough search, evaluated multiple fire engine manufacturers. Ultimately, they settled on the Pierce manufacturer as the fire engine that they felt would best, or the fire engines that would best suit the needs for the fire district for not only now, for the future. They went through the design and what we refer to as the speccing process, which was a several-month process. Ultimately, landed on a design. As many of you know, most fire engines are custom-made to each fire department's specific needs. So unlike going to a local car dealership and buying a vehicle off the lot, there just isn't that option really in the fire service. Ultimately, we selected Pierce Type 1 engines. As you see in your packet, the proposal, the total cost of both fire engines is approximately $1.6 million. We are receiving several discounts as part of that purchasing. One is using the Sourcewell Consortium pricing, 100% prepayment at time of order, and then a discount for ordering 2 fire engines simultaneously, identical fire engines. So essentially, through those discounts, we were able to save approximately $118,000 off the total purchase price of the fire engines. After we as we were identifying the fire engines and design, we also enlisted the help of Brandis Tallman, the placement agents, to help us with the financing of the fire engines. I'm happy to say that even in today's current fiscal climate with rising interest rates, Brandis Tallman was able to secure what we believe is an extraordinary interest rate of 2.5%, which was a full point below what we initially estimated. So as you look through the packet, the financing option will be approximately $291,000 per year for 7 years to fulfill the purchase and lease agreement for the engines. I think it's important to note that in the fire apparatus world, the lease agreement is more commonly referred to as financing the purchase of your fire engine. Once that lease agreement, the terms are fulfilled, the fire district owns and retains those fire engines for however long we determine to do that. It's a little bit different than the next agenda item, which is a light vehicle lease. So with that, joining us virtually is Nikki Tallman of Brandis Tallman. She was her and her team were instrumental in getting us an extraordinarily good interest rate. Also, Julie Wunderlich of Jones Hall, which is our bond counsel, and then obviously here in the audience is Ken Campo, our financial consultant for the district. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and also not only of myself, but of the team that is here tonight as well related to this agenda item.
Thank you, and I welcome everyone who is attending the meeting here this evening. Certainly great to hear an interest rate of that number given today's financing world. So good work, much appreciated. Any questions at this time from board members? Board member Joseph.
Yes, I would agree. This is a good financing package. I'm glad that we were able to pull it off, so good job there. And I don't really have much of an issue other than I noticed in the report there's something like 2.25 years delay from ordering to receiving, which seems like a very long time, and then B, how does that impact your operations? You're going to have to wait over 2 years to get this.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, the supply chain is truly the limiting factor right now. My previous job ordered a fair amount of fire engines in a short period of time, and traditionally it was about a 365-day turnaround. But now with supply chain issues, it has pushed the delivery date out significantly. And Pierce is not the only fire engine or fire apparatus manufacturer that is experiencing those. I'm talking to colleagues. Some other manufacturers are actually having to enforce the force majeure component of the contracts because they simply can't get some of the parts needed. It's interesting how everything in this world is interconnected. As we were talking to the Pierce salesman, he had just come back from the Pierce manufacturing facility in Wisconsin. That's where they're based out of. And he was talking to their head logistics manager that was responsible for ordering and ensuring all the parts are delivered and so forth. And the comment was, for the next several months, grain is going to severely impact our ability to get parts in a timely manner because many of the semi-trucks and across the country are going to be tasked with delivering grain, especially in light of what's occurring in Ukraine. So they're going to actually be more gainfully employed delivering grain than they are parts for a fire engine. Unfortunately, it's just a reality of where we are now. I will say that I have a pretty long track record with dealing with Pierce, and if they put it in their contract, then they're very good about honoring that. and working to ensure that they meet those timelines, where some of the smaller manufacturers are much more susceptible to some of the supply chain issues just because they don't order parts in the volume in which Pierce does.
Thank you.
Other questions from Board of Directors? Okay, we'll move on to public comment on this. Any public comment on this matter?
No, Chair.
Okay, I will close public comment. Any further discussion needed from the board? If not, what action does the board choose to take?
If not, I will, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-20, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District approving lease financing in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $1,842,000 to finance the acquisition of fire protection equipment, authorizing the execution and delivery of related agreements, and approving related matters.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abudamos?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, directors. Moving on to our next item.
Thank you.
Thank you both, Nikki and Julie. Appreciate you joining us this evening.
Good to have you here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to business item number 6, adopt resolution number 2022-21, approving the proposed master equity lease agreement between the American Canyon Fire Protection District and Enterprise Fleet Management. The term Enterprise Fleet Management is a collective reference to Enterprise FM Trust, a Delaware statutory trust, and Enterprise Fleet Management, Inc., a Missouri corporation. Chief Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. In keeping with the theme of tonight's meeting, another item regarding the fleet of the fire district. As you look through your packet, it's important to note that our current light vehicle fleet has an average age of 12 years, and quite honestly, our oldest vehicle is 21 years old. This is a program I believe you are very familiar with. This is a long-term lease program through Enterprise, which is exactly the same program that the City of American Canyon uses for their fleet. The benefits of this lease agreement is this would allow us to write, or what I would refer to as correct or right size our vehicle fleet in one option, one fell swoop, essentially. Again, going back to our preliminary budget, the board approved the purchase of 2 vehicles for an estimated cost of $180,000. While looking at that, we started engaging with Enterprise. We have the ability to cycle out or replace our entire fleet with the addition of 2 vehicles, which definitely have a use for approximately 35% of what we've budgeted as a capital outlay for this fiscal year. So the vehicle lease would be approximately $64,000 a year. It would be for 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, the vehicles would be sent back to Enterprise. Enterprise would sell them and then apply that equity towards the next 5-year lease. In addition, we've worked with Enterprise to be able to take our existing fleet, send them to Enterprise. They would sell them and then apply what they estimate right now, approximately $48,000 towards this lease. Again, potentially saving us money in our monthly costs of the lease. Be happy to go through, if the board desires, the 7 vehicles and our intended uses for them. But I think some of the highlights would be a Ford Escape. We have currently a small vehicle that is used as a pool vehicle, but we would have 1 additional Ford Escape. The intent with that would be to assign that to ACERT, which is a function of the fire department. The reason behind that is oftentimes they are tasked either by ACPD or the fire department to provide traffic control. As an example, a couple months ago when the power pole was hit in front of Poco Way and 20 or Broadway was severely backed up for several hours. Currently, ACERT uses their personal vehicles to provide traffic control, as well as obviously their high visibility vests. The addition of this vehicle would allow us to outfit it with an amber light bar so that there's an increased visibility for our CERT members while they're working on the roadways. Again, as another added layer of safety for our CERT members that are out doing a public service. We would also one additional vehicle would be in preparation if the board were to approve the battalion chief position. We would need a dedicated vehicle for that battalion chief position for 24/7 response. And then the balance of the vehicles would be just replacing our existing fleet. As also noted, at the end of the lease, it's estimated that the equity for the 7 vehicles in this lease would be a little over $100,000, $110,000. That money would then be applied to pay off any balance of the lease or be applied to the next 5-year renewal if we were to decide to go that way, again, lowering the costs. I think you'll remember from the city's presentation, the longer we're in this lease agreement, the more economical it becomes as we start to cycle vehicles out and use that equity to pay off the subsequent lease amounts. So also, obviously, with newer vehicles, the district would realize less maintenance costs, as also with newer vehicles, they become much more fuel efficient. So we'd also see a potential savings in the fuel costs that is a general fund budgeted item for the district. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Board Member Oral?
Yeah, thank you. It wasn't clear to me, I get the lease part of it, and I think it's actually a modern way of doing it, and I'm glad Enterprise offers this program. Keeps the vehicles fresh, all the benefits that you had just outlined. It wasn't clear to me where the cost of outfitting these vehicles come in.
So the cost of upfitting these vehicles, because the vehicles are estimated about 8 months out, because all these vehicles will be coming straight off the assembly line, that would be budgeted for next fiscal year. If we did have a vehicle that showed up prior to the end of this fiscal year, we could use some of the money from the $180,000 that we had originally budgeted for the 2 vehicles to help offset some of the upfitting costs for the vehicles.
So let's say we get a Ford F-250.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming from a car manufacturer, correct?
Yes.
Through Enterprise, but then you have to make it fire ready.
Yeah, and really that's traditionally just the installation of the warning lights or the light package. Our intent is to, as we cycle out our existing fleet, we'll be able to take a lot of that hardware off our existing fleet, place it on our new vehicles. Radios, we have the opportunity sometimes to be able to take the existing radios, put it into the new vehicle. For the command module for the F-250, we currently have 2 command modules in the back of both the fire chief and the assistant fire chief's vehicle that we would be able to take out, put into the new vehicles. So really, outside of some striping and maybe some additional costs, the bulk of the cost would just be for the labor to have that actually put on the vehicles.
But we outsource that obviously to,
Yeah.
Who's our contract outfitter?
So we don't have a contract. Watco is kind of the
Watco.
industry standard for Northern California. I believe they do the upfitting for the ACPD's vehicles. We recently had Watco do some work on my vehicle. There was a radio issue. It's estimated some of these vehicles will be not very expensive to upfit. Some it could be $10,000 to $20,000 depending on if we make any additions to what we currently have on our vehicles and what we can take off our current vehicles and place on our new ones. But talking to Enterprise, because these vehicles are coming straight off the assembly line, they're estimating about 8 months for them. So that would put us into next fiscal year where we would have to budget for them.
And that comes through our operating budget that
Yes.
we would do.
Yep.
Okay, so but it seems to me that the savings would come through anyway, right? I mean, like outfitting.
Whether we buy a new vehicle through the
Right, 'cause
get
you're
a
gonna
new
outfit the new
interviews,
vehicle
we're
too,
still gonna
yeah.
have to upfit. So there was some upfitting costs in the 180,000. So if we get a vehicle or two prior to the end of the fiscal year, we could take some of that money for some of the upfitting.
Yeah, so that was a question for me. It wasn't clear if they would come upfitted. I prefer outfitting, but upfitting it, yeah, it'd be a separate budget item that we would look at.
Yeah, and it is an option through Enterprise that you can get them upfitted, but talking to the city's fleet manager, his recommendation is we just use Watco or a similar vendor because there is some cost savings in having a local vendor do it versus Enterprise.
Thank you.
Director Joseph.
A quick comment from the staff report. In addition to fuel efficiencies and maintenance, there's also safety features that really old pieces of equipment don't have, and that's another good reason for cycling. And
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
As you noted, and I overlooked it, but the vehicle stability or traction control really is what they say is the most substantial vehicle safety feature since the advent of the seatbelt. Many of our vehicles are old enough that they don't have that feature to where we will have that feature in the new vehicles.
Overall, I think it's a great idea to cycle our equipment, and I think over time it may make sense to turn them sooner than every 7 or 8 years. But I appreciate that you're following up on this because it's just an easy way to have a good fleet that's well maintained. And it's it's nice to have new equipment too. So just from a morale perspective, I'm sure people would appreciate a new piece of equipment versus a 20-year-old piece. So.
Absolutely. And, in emergency response, we don't have the ability to tell the public that the vehicle's in the shop when you need us. We have to have vehicles that are mechanically sound, up to date, so that whenever we need them at literally a moment's notice, they're able to get out the door and provide the services that we do to the community.
And then the only other comment, as I mentioned to you when we talked about it, any opportunity to convert to electric as appropriate, I certainly hope you would look at as a strategy going forward.
Absolutely.
The question regarding the, it's an older fleet that we have. So there's probably any number of issues, parts break down, need to be replaced, maintenance, as compared to a new vehicle, which makes this a good program to get into, in my view. I'm just wondering if there's some way of calculating the cost over time, what it has cost to maintain all this stuff. I know it's be a real stretch for a Ford 2001 Ford 250. It's 21 years old, but yeah, how many parts have you had to replace?
So I don't have that information for you readily. I can tell you that, and Laura Preventure has been spearheading it, is a new program that we've been implementing called Check It. Track It is a different program. Laura will remind me of that when the meeting is over. But Check It covers a lot of things as far as inventory and so forth, but we're starting to track all of our maintenance costs on our vehicles and mileage and our daily checks, so that moving forward, we actually have a very accurate running total of what it is truly costing us to operate our equipment, especially when it comes to maintenance and repairs.
No, I was just reflecting on catalytic converter cost. If that's one, that's probably close to $2,000, something like that. So, anyway, I think it would be a great way of showing a comparison, because this does make sense to do the least option. The more larger corporations or cities have been involved with that for a long time, for exactly the same reason we're getting into it. Yeah.
Yep.
Any other comment from the board? We'll open public comment now.
Chairman.
We haven't received anyone? Okay, I will close public comment. We'll return to the board for further discussion, desired action.
If there's no further action by council, then I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2022-21, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District approving the master equity lease agreement between the American Canyon Fire Protection District and Enterprise Fleet Management.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph?
Aye.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abudamos?
Yes. Did Board Member Joseph say hi?
I said aye.
Yes,
Oh,
we
I
did.
thought you said hi.
I just zoned out temporarily.
Okay.
I thought you said I. Same thing.
And Chair Garcia?
Yes, thank you. We concluded that our business agenda item. We're moving on now, Fire Chief oral report. Chief Bellier.
Thank you, Chair. As was asked last meeting, kind of what is an update on fire season? I think during the summer months, that's obviously at the forefront of many people's minds. While I don't want to jinx it, both statewide and locally, we've been the recipient of very favorable weather conditions. There have been a handful of large fires, predominantly in the north half of the state, of recent that were caused, more than likely were lightning and some other caused fires, but most of those have very good containment percentages on them, which I always pay attention to the large fires and what the percentage containment is, because that means the higher the percentage containment, the more resources that are available for the next fire to start. So right now, I would say the bulk of the firefighting resources are on their home base and available for response, which is always a good feeling, because if you do get that fire, that ignition, where you're typically the most successful is overwhelming that fire with resources in the first several hours to keep it small, both with aircraft and ground resources. So right now we're looking good, but as we start to enter September and October, that's kind of where, in my years of experience, the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up, because that's where we start to get those offshore north wind events that are typically very conducive to large rapid fire growth. Usually they're short duration, several days, but as we start to get to that transitional period between summer and fall, and we start getting those highs and lows moving, that's where we start to see more of those north winds. So the next couple months will truly be what I watch for the most till we get some wetting rain. I like nothing better than coming into work and seeing the fog bank, because that means that the moisture, the humidity level is very high. While we still have a window for fires to start and burn in the afternoons, that burn window is much shorter. So that's kind of where we stand on the statewide side and both locally as far as fire season. Like to just mention that the fire district will be hosting our annual 9/11 event this year at the Station 11 on Donaldson Way. So invites will go out. It's open to the public. It's a very good way for all of us to remember those tragic events that happened 21 years ago, where 343 firefighters lost their lives in the attacks on the World Trade Center. So that will be an important event for us, and we hope that any of the public that is inclined to come to help remember the sacrifices that occurred that day, please join us in that. And then lastly, we've opened our recruitment for Assistant Fire Chief. While I've been extremely grateful to have Chief Komisky here with me for the last several months and a few months more, unfortunately, what's the saying? All good things must come to an end at some point. So we'll be recruiting for Chief Komisky's replacement. So if anyone knows anyone that might be interested, please direct them to the fire district's website. They'll have the information on how to apply and so forth. But looking forward to that. I guess recruitment and fleet have been kind of the two common themes lately. We just completed our recruitment for our 4 new firefighters. They're moving through the process. We're still on track for September 19th for our academy to start. And we're moving right into assistant chief recruitment as well. And we'll have that complete before the end of the year. And that's all I have for my chief's report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Any questions from Board of Directors? Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I think probably on the getting into the fall and winter seasons, probably something on the community level, knowing how to prepare for safety. The co-ed group certainly working with that, mapping your neighborhood, knowing what resources you have. But we don't only have a fire season that we're beginning to enter into that usually comes in the fall. It's also the flooding condition that can occur as well. Some information from, I think it was on the national news, interesting broadcast on, what was it called, mega flood? Due to climate change, there's less snowpack in the Sierras. Well, snowpack holds back a lot of water, releases it slowly. So the expectation, should that occur, would be all that water would come down and form massive flood. So something just to be aware of, but I know maybe fall season is the time to get ready for fall fire season and flooding as well. So.
Yeah, on that vein, just give a little plug for folks to clear out their gutters. A lot of times you get leaves and other debris that accumulate in their gutters. Those can be a receptive fuel bed in the event of a wildfire where embers are cast out ahead of the fire front. They land in your gutter, they start small fire there, it transitions into your roof or your attic, as well as getting your gutters cleaned helps you with any potential flooding or so forth on your property during the winter, fall, which hopefully is a very wet, rainy season this year.
Yes.
So
With a lot of snow in the mountains.
hopefully, yes.
Very good. Anything else further from Board of Directors on what I made my comments? Board of Directors, any comments? Okay. Committee reports and future agenda items. Hearing none, we have concluded our business for the evening. We thank you all very much, and we are adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night.